Hello everybody, Jose Rodriguez here. Man, there's nothing like a little controversy. And I often get into little arguments with people in these forums when they start talking about things that maybe they're a little bit, I would say, ignorant, but they really don't know much about it. This has to do with borderless printing and what it does to the printer. Not necessarily what it does to the prints, but I will touch on that as well. Now, back in the darkroom, when I was doing a lot of darkroom work, and that's decades worth of it, we basically had easels. They had adjustable L-shaped arms, and that allowed you to set borders on your standard paper sizes. What were those? 4 by 5, 5 by 7, 8 by 10, 11 by 14, 16 by 20. So you would set, say, a 1/4 inch border all the way around. You had little tabs for each paper size. So you just lift up the top, insert your paper, align it top and left, and lower those cropping arms down. That would immediately block the outer, say, 1/4 inch of the paper evenly. You would then project your negative image onto the paper, expose it, develop it, and you would have a beautiful print with nice even 1/4 inch or more or less borders. Now, to print borderless in the darkroom, you would have to literally somewhere have a vacuum easel that would hold the paper flat. You really could not use a sheet of glass because that glass may be dirty, may be dusty, may be scratched, and you don't want to then end up with all of those defects projected onto your print. So borderless darkroom print was really a little bit of an oddity back then. And lo and behold, later on, laboratories that used to take a couple of days to process your film and print your snapshots were doing it in 1 hour because they had these special processing machines that would not only process your film, dry your negatives, print your negatives, and produce beautiful borderless 4x6 prints exposed on a big old roll of paper 4-inch wide. Now, nobody noticed that, oh man, these images had to be enlarged beyond the edges of the paper. But people didn't notice that because most viewfinders only show you about 90% of the actual image being projected or exposed onto the film. So you never really missed that loss of image as the image was enlarged to be printed. And of course, the wet printing process, it had no problem with overspray of ink like inkjet printers have now. Well, people fell in love with that look. So when photo printers started to become more and more popular and quality started to become better and better, the companies were forced to incorporate the borderless option. Well, it was limited to certain sizes because that's where those sponges were located to at least allow some of the overspray ink to be absorbed onto the sponge, except, yeah, only about 80% of it that gets absorbed onto the sponges. The rest actually gets aspirated everywhere else, and it coats the inside of your printer. Now, an individual that's very, very pro borderless printing said that he's printed over 1,000, I don't know what size he's mentioned, and up to now, no problems. I said, well, that's fine. Have you actually taken a look inside your printer? Have a look at your printer and see how much gunk is inside your printer. It may not be affecting your prints at this moment, but you are ruining your printer. In the long run, years down the road, you will have so much spray ink and deposited ink everywhere that you just will not even want to look at it. It's that bad. A recent owner of a nice photo printer printed something like 10, I think it was about 10 fairly large borderless prints, and noticed immediately after printing those prints that the sponges on the two edges, this was a Canon printer, so Canon positions the paper right in the middle. She was able to look on the right and on the left, and it was literally wet with ink. Literally wet with ink. And that ink's supposed to be sucked down, or at least by gravity, and then it gets picked up by a tube, which then leads it over to the ink waste pads, or the waste ink cartridge. Well, if you just print borderless every once in a while, you do not generate enough for a wet spot to be created. So that ink will basically never migrate through that sponge. It will stay there and dry. Eventually, I promise you, you will start getting smudges on your prints. Now, Why would you want to do that? You see, it makes no sense to me. So what I do, if I must have an 11 by 14 borderless, I will print that 11 by 14 image on a 13 by 19 piece of paper. And then I will trim it with my trusty roto trim. And that will give me a perfectly cut 11 by 14, which has not had any of the image cropped. Because remember, when you print borderless, the driver has to artificially or physically enlarge the image so that it is actually extending beyond the edges of the paper. And the printer is actually printing, in the example of an 11 by 14, it's actually printing about an 11 and a quarter by 14 and a quarter image beyond the edges. And that ink is being spread all over the sponges. It has to do that on the leading edge as well. So you're going to have a leading edge of ink on your sponge, and as the trailing edge comes out. Now, if that was the only reason, then fine. You know, I would go ahead, and if I need to print borderless, I would do it every once in a while. It's not going to do that much harm unless I do it all the time. But here's the problem. Most printers that are desktop type models do not have vacuum advance. So the leading edge is not being supported. It might be sticking up a little bit. And so printing borderless will almost all the time produce artifacts. Scraping, banding, change of tonality, head strikes. The same thing will happen on the rear trailing edge. And that's why there is a little bit of a small print warning when you choose borderless in your driver. It'll tell you this may cause problems, okay, with the front edge and the rear edge of your prints. So they're covering by telling you this, but you demanded this feature. So it is being incorporated for you, even though they know darn well it is not a good idea. But they had to incorporate it because of the demand by users, just like you and I. So it's our fault, in other words. So if you have a high-end printer, it may have, and I'm talking in the thousands of dollars, it may have some sort of vacuum aerosol absorbing or removal system where it actually removes the overspray via vacuum and deposits it into the waste ink container. I really don't know what specific models have this feature, but none of the ones I use have it. So even the Pro 1000 doesn't have it from Canon, or the Pro 2000, the floor model, 24-inch wide Canon brand new printer. They don't have that feature, but they do have vacuum advance. And here's another problem that I see. It may actually not really be a problem, but I imagine it being a problem. You have vacuum holding the paper down. That prevents buckling due to ink loading. That prevents unevenness of the paper height as it's being sent between the platen and the printhead surface. But if you're printing borderless, where does the overspray go if you have a vacuum being created along the length of that paper path? It might suck up some of that overspray into the vacuum ports. And I don't think that's a good idea. I don't know what that would do to the system. And I don't know whether they actually really thought that out very carefully. But that's another problem. So the best I can say is don't print borderless. If you must print borderless, go ahead and print on a larger piece of paper. That way you have the full image. It has not been cropped by enlarging. And you will be able to then have a perfectly abrasion-free and no artifacts whatsoever. And best of all, you're maintaining the cleanliness of your internal components and parts of your printer. And what else can I ask? That's the best I can do. I don't want your brand new pristine color printer to become nasty and gunky because of extreme amount of overspray caused by borderless printing. That is it. A lot of people are totally against my view on this subject, but I'm just giving you the best information that I have. I speak from experience. I have seen what borderless printer does after a certain period of time, and it's not a pretty sight. All right, thank you once again. Ask any questions you might like on the comments, and I will try to address them for you. If I do not know the answer, I will send you someplace else to get the correct answer. There are a lot of really a lot more smarter people than me out there, and so I know a few of them. So again, thank you for all the support. Please subscribe, share, and like. Consider not printing borderless, okay? Consider it, really. It's not good for your printer. Bye-bye. Happy printing. Bye-bye.